Welcome back to Coming Home Well, Straight to the Point. As always, we have Dr. Paul Lawrence, the former Undersecretary for Benefits at the Veterans Affairs. We have Dr. Lawrence here to talk with us about benefits. So, Paul, there's a lot of benefits, and there's a lot of people that are asking for benefits. And with the PACT Act and a lot of the things that are coming up and that are now available, what are some things that veterans can do to sort of streamline their process and get the benefits faster, better, easier?
Well, let's just focus on disability compensation because that tends to be the one people sort of focus on. Why does my claim take so long and what can I do? So to have a completed claim for disability compensation, you need sort of three things. So let's go through each one and then talk about what it is, but not only that is what the documentation is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So first, you'll have to demonstrate that whatever happened to you, it was while you were in the service, right? And so the documentation you generally produce then is your DD-214, which shows you were in the service from certain dates and your discharge, right? But you might also want to produce your military personnel records, right? Because it'll show locations and dates. And this is particularly important if you want to say, I was in a certain place at a certain time. So the classic example is I was in Vietnam from the period of, 62 to 75. Therefore, I'm eligible for benefits with exposure to Agent Orange. And now the PACT Act, the same kind of thing. So were you in the service? Yes. And I can demonstrate it with my DD-214 and or my military personnel record. So now it's like that one's off the table, right? So now I was in the service. Okay.
Right.
The second thing is an incident occurred while I was in the service. So during those periods of times you just saw, I injured or disabled myself or something that I now am going to claim benefits for. So in a perfect world, you went to a doctor or you got medical help, right, on post or whatever, and that somehow made it into your your military medical records. Okay, that's the perfect world. But often that doesn't happen. And so then, of course, you want to get what's called a lay statement or lay evidence, someone who saw what happened to write a statement saying, this is what I saw. Tyler did in fact fall down, hurt his knee or something like that. Okay. So again, did what you have occur in the service and did it actually happen? Right. So
Yeah,
here's some
right.
evidence. And again, and I think a lot of veterans struggle with, well, I didn't go to the doctor. Right. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
the lay evidence comes in. And here's where a VSO can help because they're really good generally at what is lay evidence. Who can you get a statement from? Who can demonstrate that, in fact, you got hurt there? And then finally, and this is really critical, is the connection between what happened in the service and your life now. Because obviously, if it got better, you have no claim, right? I fell down, but I got better. No, you continue to endure pain or discomfort or something. So you have to demonstrate that it continues to bother you and is connected to what happened to you in the service. So here's where medical records really come into play. So it could be your military records, depending upon when you leave service, but more likely it's going to be your private medical records, right? Since,
Mm-hmm.
I got out a long time ago, now I go see a private provider. So you'll be asked to get those. And again, here's where lay evidence might help you. Spouses, family members witnessing how much pain you're in, how much discomfort you have, and the like. And so I think part of what we talk about is the way to help make sure your claim goes through the process as quickly as possible is have a completed claim. Have all the information so someone can make a decision relatively straightforward. Again, I was in the service. Here's evidence of what happened to me. I got hurt, I fell, I got injured, and it continues to bother me today. And here's more evidence. If you have all these things, cannot guarantee you'll get the outcome you want, but they should have sufficient information that they can make a decision. And of course, the opposite of that is without that, back and forth, letters, calls. Hey, I don't have anything that demonstrates this. Veterans get frustrated. VA gets frustrated, the whole thing. So again, completed claim is really what you want to strive for.
One of the things that I always hear from people that are having challenges, they're wanting to submit a claim, they're not sure what to do, is I always tell them, make sure you organize everything because you have access to everything and you know what each thing is. And if you have like 1,000 pages of medical records, or maybe even more, I mean, some people have huge volumes of medical records and other people, and it's usually when you're deployed, an incident happens and there isn't any documentation, or you went to the battalion aid station and all those records got bagged up somewhere or shipped off somewhere and they did not make it to your medical records because those are in a whole different place. And those are the ones that tend to be more problematic over the years. And make sure you assemble that and make sure it's legible and organized. It is a huge difference if you think about it from the perspective of the person that's going to be rating your claim. If you say, hey, yeah, there's some records over there in my medical records. Yeah, good luck finding the scribble on the my knee pain from 25 years ago, in 1,000 pages. Well, if they don't find it, and they're trying to do a good job, but they're doing a lot of reading and trying to understand what's happening and trying to get your claim done, slows everything down. If you have it and you have those records, assembling them with the 3 key components. Yeah, you were in the service. Here I was. This is what happened. And you mentioned it. It's a current problem.
Right.
I always see a lot of folks that are at the other end of the spectrum. My back is bad or my knees are bad. And I was an infantryman 25 years ago, and it's clearly related. And it probably has some nexus. But if you're looking at it just from an external view, go, hey, you were a roofer for 20 years, or some other thing. And so those things you have to sort of make a case that's pretty reasonable. Right. So what are some of the biggest challenges when people are doing that? They're trying to assemble it, they're putting it together, but they may not have those records.
So let's break your comments apart in 2 things. One is you make an excellent point about organizing your material so the reviewer can read it, right? Yeah, they could shift through your records or not, but there's no harm in, providing a piece of paper and say, look, I have attached a Post-it, my DD-214 that shows you the dates. Here they are. I've attached a Post-it into my medical records. Here they are. This is and look, here are my private medical records. I made this very easy for you to do, right? So again, that's like the magic, right? Make it easy to read. Obviously, we're not talking about lying, but just like these are the facts. You can see my case is clear. So I would do that. The big one, of course, is they don't have records. Okay. So obviously, if you don't have your military records, you don't have your DD-214, you can get all that from NARA, the National Archives, nara.gov, NARA.gov. Okay. It'll take a while, but they've gotten better. The challenge, of course, is if you've done some super secretive stuff, or you were in the military before 1973 when the place burned down, you could kind of have some problems. Okay. So I think, for example, if you're on special operations, if you're also on submarines, a lot of this is just withheld because of the special nature of that. So that's one problem. There are ways to do it, but it just takes a little while longer, and people with special clearance have to help you. So you could appreciate that, right? And then, of course, the classic example is what you allude to. I got hurt. I don't have a medical record. I don't even know if I remember who was there when it happened. That's a real problem. So I like to say that eventually you could find somebody who can do something and show it to you, okay? There's an interesting website, I forget if we talked about it, called Together We Served. This is where people put the history of their service. Sometimes people find their buddies that way, and you can get statements, but that's really a challenge, I know. So if you didn't put the records out there, you didn't somehow document it somehow in some way in your journal, in your something, you really will be in a difficult situation. And you're right. Later, people will look back and they will say, okay, did it really happen in the military or not? And that's not mean. It's just the inevitability of life, right? So that's why I think, a lot of what goes on, you ask me, who should buy my book about benefits, right? It's like, service members. So they are prepared while they're going through service to understand what you should be retaining copies of, so you don't have these problems later. But it is a tough problem. And absent somebody saying, yeah, I saw it, you're really in a world of hurt.
And there's usually someone, because, you think back, I can think back 30 years and some of the folks and at least the units and the people. And I've run into people just as a small world. Right. I ran into my old battalion commander about 5 years ago, and it's been like 30 years. Just a small world, things you run into of people. I ran into a guy I served with over in Bosnia. He lives locally. He's a plumber. And it's just weird how you run into people. So mark those things down if they happen, because they know people, and sort of that spider web snowball research to find somebody that can talk with you about it. I'm literally dealing with a friend of mine that's going through this right now. He's hurt on a mission in South America that was kind of sensitive at the time, got hurt, trying to find that information. So if you can find it, what is the best way to document it? You mentioned the lay statement. What is that, and how does that work?
Well, it's just a short written statement about, gee, I saw Tyler got, independent person, not a medical care provider generally. I saw Tyler get hurt. It was on or about this date. He fell, it bothered him for 3 or 4 days. Just some facts, where, when,
Hmm.
why, how. There's a VA form, but it can also just be like what you saw. This is what I saw to demonstrate that. Now, but what I also want to go back, Tyler, just in case, if you don't have that, go ahead and file anyhow, because it's better you have a claim on record, even if it is denied, so people at least know this. They may look for this, but let me tell you an example of something that really was kind of played its way out. So the Agent Orange thing, Blue Water Navy, happened in 2019, which means it began in 2020. So now all kinds of records are coming out about, where were the ships and the like and whatever. Through a weird kind of discovery way, of what was going on, records came up that talked about, remember the flights of Vietnamese kids at like the spring of 75 when Saigon is falling and kind of whatever. Well, one of the airplanes crashed and burned and killed everybody on there. It's a terrible story. Make up a number, 200 kids under the age of, like, I don't know, 3. It was terrible.
Oh, wow.
But when you could finally get these records, what you found were 5 service members flew the aircraft. There were a handful of military service who were nurses. They had filed claims. Now we knew they were there because nobody had any information. It said, oh, something happened to them, but nobody had any information about them. Now the information could be matched in such a
Oh,
way.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. So think about stuff like that in terms of, okay, you don't have it, but file the claim anyhow, because maybe one day something will happen that this information could be revealed. So, probability is low, but that's always comes to my mind when I think about it. Someone goes, "Oh, did you realize what was on that airplane?" And once you get over the terrible, terrible situation, you realize, okay, now, benefits can be provided to their families in this situation. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of records out there, and just because you can't find it doesn't mean they don't exist.
yeah.
Perhaps you get better at research, somebody helps you, whatever, VSO. There's a lot of people that do a lot of things to help find these records and sort of get those claims going. Paul, I leave you with the last word. We talked pretty quickly about all these things, but what are the most important things people should take away from this conversation?
Your records really do matter. Don't throw these things away. I think people are smarter now about this kind of stuff, just the electronic age we live. Hang on to it forever. It'll be really important. You can always get it from NARA. It's a little more hit or miss. It's getting more hit now than miss than back in the day. And again, if something happens to you, get medical treatment. But if you can't do that, get somebody to acknowledge it shortly after it happened. I know sometimes situations can be hairy and the like, but that will be really important later.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well, straight to the point. As always, it's really appreciated.
Thanks, Tyler.